His brother was murdered in a lawless underground cage. Now, this undefeated legend is breaking his vows and stepping out of exile. Not for a belt, not for money, but for blood. The story begins in the quiet locker room bathroom where mixed martial arts fighter Paton stands alone, gathering his thoughts and focusing his mind moments before his big match. His trainer, Sammy, walks in and asks if he is ready. Paton stays completely silent and doesn't answer, so Sammy takes him out into the hallway to talk to him privately. Sammy tells him that in this entire world, they are the only two people who know for a fact that he is going to win this fight. Standing right in front of him, Sammy emphasizes that steady, controlled breathing is the foundation for a fighter to think with absolute clarity during a battle. That clarity is exactly what allows a fighter to map out his strategy and find the path to victory. Sammy forces Paton to repeat these words out loud, over and over at the top of his lungs, until Paton reaches peak focus and readiness. Stepping out, Paton shares a warm hug with his brother, Malone, who gives him intense encouragement and motivation to win. Paton then makes his way toward the ring, his eyes burning with defiance. 10 years pass, and we find Paton working as a simple fisherman on a boat out at sea. It is clear that Paton has completely distanced himself from boxing and martial arts, despite once being recognized as one of the greatest fighters in the history of the sport. He chose a life of quiet isolation instead. However, it is obvious that the heavy burden of the past still weighs on his shoulders. A specific event seems to haunt him, keeping him perpetually lost in thought. After finishing his shift, Paton takes his wages from the boat owner, only to realize the money is short compared to the grueling work he did. The owner explains that the weekly catch was low. The owner points out that he actually paid Paton more than his colleague, Neil, because Paton put in far more effort during the haul. Refusing to take unfair advantage, Paton splits his extra money evenly with Neil, believing his partner's work was just as valuable. Grateful for the noble gesture, Neil thanks him warmly. Paton returns home to greet his wife, Lucy, and their daughter, Maddie. His deep love for them is obvious, but their financial situation is severely strained. That night, Lucy suggests finding a job to help cover expenses, but Paton firmly refuses. Sensing his stress, Lucy shares the joyful news that she is pregnant. Overjoyed, Paton holds her tight. The following day, Paton gets into a heated argument with the boat owner, having grown tired of the man's poor treatment of him and Neil. The owner insults him, calling him a failed fighter and mocking him by saying that men of his caliber are now millionaires living in luxury. Snapping, Paton prepares to strike, but the owner anticipates the move and threatens him with a flare gun. Though Paton is fully capable of disarming him anyway, he reins in his anger, cools down, and walks away. That evening, Paton sits in his workshop, setting up his gear for a training session. Lucy walks in and asks if he plans to watch his brother Malone's upcoming match. Paton affirms he will definitely watch, especially since Malone is fighting the reigning world champion, Xavier. Lucy admits she is too exhausted to stay up and goes to bed. From the opening bell, Paton watches closely, visibly annoyed by Malone's arrogance. Malone is actively taunting Xavier while wearing a mouthguard stamped with a vulgar insult. As the match progresses, Paton begins training along with the broadcast as if he were inside the ring himself. Suddenly, the commentator announces that Malone is struggling heavily against the world champion. Paton freezes, focusing entirely on the screen. Paton watches in shock as Xavier lands devastating blows, sending Malone crashing to the canvas completely unconscious. In a blatant, illegal violation of the rules, Xavier strikes Malone while he is already defenseless on the ground. Although Xavier is declared the winner, the announcer notes that he will undoubtedly face severe disciplinary action. Distraught over his brother, Paton rushes to the hospital. There, Malone's wife, Lisa, sits anxiously outside the intensive care unit. When Paton arrives with his family, Lisa apologizes for calling him, explaining she had no one else to turn to in such a crisis. It is revealed that Paton and Malone had been estranged and hadn't spoken for 5 years. Sensing the gravity of the situation, Lucy takes Maddie to the restroom to give them privacy. Lisa breaks the news that Malone suffered a brain hemorrhage from the hit and has fallen into a coma. Paton reassures her, promising that Malone is strong and will pull through. Just then, a man named Stone arrives to deliver a bouquet of flowers on behalf of Xavier's manager, claiming Xavier regrets the outcome. Stone then greets Paton and requests a private word. Curious, Paton steps aside with him to see what he wants. Stone reveals he remembers Paton from his championship days, acknowledging him as the only undefeated fighter in the history of the sport. Stone presents an irresistible offer, $75,000 to step into the ring against Xavier. He reveals that Xavier Xavier personally demanded this match. Years ago, Paton had fought Xavier, knocking him out cold in a mere 6 seconds, the single, humiliating blemish on Xavier's history. Paton firmly rejects the offer, stating he is retired. Unfazed, Stone raises the stakes to $85,000, noting he is well aware of Paton's financial hardships and that this money would change his life for the better. Stone admits he doesn't care who wins. He only cares about the massive pay-per-view profits. Stone begins pitching sensational marketing headlines, such as the legendary undefeated champion returning to avenge his fallen brother, alongside other catchphrases to draw public interest. Despite the psychological pressure, Paton ignores his words and walks away. In a final attempt, Stone pushes the offer to $100,000, calling it his final bid, and drops a bombshell. Malone is drowning in massive debts that must be paid. Before Paton can respond, Lucy and Maddie return. Stone hands his business card to Maddie, telling her to advise her father to think carefully before taking his leave. Paton enters Malone's room and asks Lisa about the debt. Lisa confesses that Malone borrowed $50,000 from a ruthless gang leader named Danny. Malone did this purely to maintain the lavish lifestyle expected of a top-tier athlete, believing he could clear the debt with his profits from the Xavier fight. Now that he has lost, the debt remains. Paton is deeply troubled. He knows Danny's reputation and knows the criminal will extract his payment by any means necessary. Back home, Paton discusses Stone's offer with Lucy, noting that $100,000 could solve all their problems. However, Lucy states she could never be happy seeing him ended up in a hospital bed like his brother. Relieved, Paton assures her he already turned it down. The next morning, Paton goes for his daily run. Through his headphones, he listens to a sports radio podcast featuring a live interview with Xavier. When the host questions Xavier about the illegal strike on Malone and asks if he owes the family an apology, Xavier arrogantly dismisses the claim, denying any wrongdoing. Disgusted by the lack of sportsmanship, the host reminds Xavier that Malone's brother, Paton, knocked him out in 6 seconds, a record that still stands in the sport's history. Incensed by the reminder, Xavier launches into a furious tirade, cursing Paton and claiming he could destroy him in under 3 seconds. Fueled by absolute rage, Paton marches straight to Stone and agrees to the fight on one condition: the purse must be $150,000, wired directly to his account the moment the contract is signed. Stone agrees without hesitation, producing the paperwork immediately. He informs Paton he has exactly 1 month and 3 weeks to prepare. Despite the dangerously short notice, Paton signs the contract. He visits a local combat gym where he runs into Rose, the daughter of his old trainer Sammy. Rose was a formidable martial artist herself until a severe knee injury forced her into coaching. Rose is thrilled to see Paton after 10 long years. However, when Paton inquires about Sammy, Rose warns that her father still holds a deep grudge over the past and will refuse to see him. Paton explains he needs to train for a high-stakes match against Xavier in 7 weeks. Rose is stunned. Paton has been out of the game for a decade. His age is a factor, and his peak conditioning is long gone. Seeing his unshakable determination, she offers to train him personally, and he accepts. Suddenly, Sammy walks in. His face sours at the sight of Paton, and he demands he leave the gym permanently. Rose calms Paton down, promising to handle her father, and instructs Paton to return at dawn. Paton leaves and goes straight to find Danny. It turns out the two share a long history from a decade ago when they met and bonded while serving time in prison. After reminiscing about their old prison brawls, Paton hands over the $50,000 to clear Malone's debt. Respecting his honor, Danny calls him a true man and extends an open offer of assistance whenever needed. At dawn, Paton leaves his house for training, only to find Neil waiting outside. Having quit his job at the docks, Neil asks to serve as Paton's corner man. Paton accepts, and they head to the gym. Upon arrival, Rose objects to Neil's presence, viewing his lack of experience as a liability. Paton convinces her that Neil is a fast learner. When Paton steps into the ring for a sparring session, his performance is dismal. A far weaker opponent easily dominates him. Catching Sammy watching from his office with a look of profound disappointment, Paton uses the sting of shame as fuel to train harder. Later, an unexpected distraction occurs when Malone walks into the gym, fully recovered from his coma, but harboring deep resentment. Malone mocks Paton for his absence over the years, claiming he never asked for his help and intends to take revenge on Xavier himself. The argument escalates into a physical altercation before the gym members separate them. The next day, Lucy is horrified to see bruises covering Paton's face. Realizing he has gone back to fighting, Paton tries to explain that he is doing this entirely entirely to secure their family's financial future. Furious, Lucy reminds him of his wedding vow, never to fight again. Devastated by the deception, she refuses to listen. Desperate to fix his form, Paton approaches Sammy to ask what it will take to earn his guidance back. Sammy reveals the depth of his past betrayal. He had mortgaged his own home to buy this gym exclusively for Paton, believing he was destined for greatness. Instead of honoring that sacrifice, Paton had thrown it away in a reckless, alcohol-fueled bar fight that landed him in prison. Even then, Sammy had designed a comeback blueprint for his release, only for Paton to vanish completely without a trace. As a result, the bank foreclosed on Sammy's house, and his wife left him. Deeply remorseful, Paton confesses he had no idea his actions caused such devastation. He explains that prison was a brutal, daily survival struggle that completely altered his outlook on life. He chose isolation to find peace and build a family. Now, as a father with another child on the way, he is purely fighting for the guaranteed money to secure their future. Sammy criticizes him for selling out his legacy for quick cash, arguing that if the spirit of competition means nothing to him, he shouldn't waste Rose's time. Meanwhile, Stone and Xavier face the Athletic Commission, where they receive a devastating blow. Xavier is suspended for 6 months due to his illegal conduct during the Malone fight. Refusing to lose the massive promotional investments, Stone and Xavier confront Paton at the gym. Stone proposes moving the bout to an underground, no-rules, unsanctioned street fight. Paton flatly refuses, stating the change violates their contract, rendering the deal null and void. Xavier attempts to bait Paton with insults, but Paton remains cool, calmly reminding Xavier that it only took 6 seconds to put him on the canvas years ago. Furious, Xavier and Stone storm out. Paton returns home, confesses the truth to Lucy, and vows never to step into a ring again. Touching her hands, he begs for her forgiveness, which she lovingly grants. Later, Paton visits Malone to invite him to Maddie's birthday party, mentioning how much the little girl adores him. Touched, Malone reveals he has already prepared a massive gift for her. On the day of the party, Malone arrives, hands Maddie her present, and tells her to open it only after he leaves. Citing an urgent commitment, Malone leaves abruptly, leaving Paton deeply unsettled by his behavior. When Maddie opens the gift, Paton is shocked to find a massive stack of cash. Lisa breaks down in tears, confessing that Malone secretly agreed to take Paton's place in the underground. No rules fight against Xavier to clear his own conscience and provide for them. Because Malone's medical condition remains critical, this fight is a suicide mission. Horrified, Paton races against time to stop the match. At the underground venue, Stone encourages Xavier, instructing him to prolong the beating as much as possible to satisfy the high-paying crowd. The match begins with Malone throwing powerful, desperate strikes. Xavier easily avoids them, countering with measured shots. However, as Malone lands a heavy blow, Xavier loses his temper and unleashes a brutal assault, slamming Malone's head violently against an iron structure. Malone collapses to the ground, dead. Panic erupts through the underground venue as the crowd flees the scene. Paton arrives too late, collapsing in grief over his brother's lifeless body, weeping bitterly as he cradles him. In the wake of the tragedy, Paton spirals into a deep, alcohol-fueled depression, overwhelmed by guilt, knowing his brother sacrificed his life to help him. Days later, Xavier appears on a televised interview. When asked if he feels remorse for Malone's death, Xavier shifts the blame entirely onto Paton, claiming the match was meant for Paton, who cowardly sent his sick brother to die in his place. Though entirely false, the accusation amplifies Paton's immense guilt. Seeing his torment, Lucy approaches him. She understands his burning desire for vengeance and knows he is torn by his promise to her. Breaking the vow herself, she tells him she will not stand in his way this time, urging him to face Xavier and avenge his brother. Reignited, Paton goes to Sammy, who immediately pledges his full support. Sammy notes that they have exactly 6 months until Xavier's official suspension ends, the perfect window to rebuild Paton into a champion. From the very next day, Paton begins training with immense strength and focus. Simultaneously, Xavier trains with ferocious intensity, preparing for the showdown. As the months pass, Paton undergoes a miraculous transformation, regaining a huge part of his elite form. Rose watches his sparring sessions in absolute awe, describing him as an unstoppable monster that no one can stand against. Sammy smiles, confident in their victory, knowing Paton is no longer driven by money, but by a powerful, redemptive need to right the wrongs of his past. Meanwhile, media scrutiny intensifies, framing the upcoming bout as a dangerous mismatch. Analysts claim Xavier is far too fast and powerful for an aging, outdated fighter who is supposedly just looking for a final payday. 6 months fly by, and fight night finally arrives. Sammy sits intently in his office, tracking every update, while Lucy watches the screen at home, terrified for her husband's life. Inside the arena, just before the opening bell, Paton flashes a cold, mocking smile at Xavier. He reveals he is wearing Malone's exact mouth guard. signaling that tonight is about pure vengeance and zero mercy. From the opening seconds, a vicious war erupts. Xavier charges with explosive power, attempting to dominate early, but Paton manages to drag him to the canvas, locking in a punishing chokehold. Gasping in pain, Xavier barely manages to break free. The two trade devastating power shots until Xavier lands a brutal head kick that sends Paton crashing to the canvas just as the first round ends. During the break, Rose praises his performance, keeping his spirits high. Paton enters the second round fighting with calculated ferocity. Xavier remains hyper-focused, executing a dangerous submission attempt, but the bell saves Paton as the referee separates them. Exhausted and semi-conscious, Paton experiences a vivid memory of Malone cheering him on before a match. The memory snaps him back to reality. He staggers to his corner, where Rose commands him to control his breathing and clear his mind, the exact philosophy Sammy taught him years ago. Rejuvenated, Paton enters the third round like a man possessed, throwing Xavier into the canvas with a massive takedown. Desperate and losing control, Xavier intentionally gouges Paton's eyes, falsely claiming to the referee that it was an accident. Suffering from blurred vision, Paton is granted a brief 30-second medical timeout. Rose asks if he can continue. Showing the heart of a true champion, Paton replies that he will fight until his very last breath. He steps back into the center of the ring. The arena erupts as the crowd chants Paton's name in unison. Launching a relentless barrage of devastating hits, Paton completely breaks the champion down. A final, thunderous blow sends Xavier crashing to the canvas. Knocked out cold, the arena explodes. Standing in the center of the ring, Paton looks down in disbelief before letting out an emotional scream of triumph, knowing justice has been served. At home, Sammy quietly celebrates his validation, while Lucy sheds tears of relief. Surrounded by Rose and Neil in a triumphant embrace, Paton holds the championship belt high as the announcer declares him the new world champion, taking home a $3 million purse and securing his place in history forever. And that is the legendary story of Paton's ultimate revenge. If you loved watching him back in action, smash that like button right now and subscribe so you never miss the next hit breakdown.